pray today. I can get down on some gang. Did you pray to get down on the gang?
Okay, so in order for a being to be pre-existing, that means that that being doesn't have a beginning nor end. So as always constantly existing, that means the word we should really focus on is not only eternal but also constant. When we think of beginning and ends, they're like time markers of something that starts and something that finishes. We see that a lot. We have our births, that's our beginning. That's probably like one of the truest to comes into describing different senses of beginning. And then we have our end or a finish, like we just die, right? That's one end. But then there's a second end, the second death, right? You die as a mortal, and then if you go to hell and you don't accept Christ, basically the latter rather than the former, you actually experience a second end. Your story ends in this way where you spend eternity for the rest of your lives in hell. Whereas God, he's the one who actually sets them out. So the only way to reconcile all of this is in order for a creator or a divine being to be eternal and constant, never ending, and always was and always is, I said whiz. He has to be beforehand and always will. So he actually becomes the one who has the first and last say to everything. When he started creating things, he was the one who actually gave them their beginnings, and he decided when and where and how. Very, very interesting that when we say declarative statements like, okay, today it's going to be my beginning, we only could really, to some extent, handle things in our lives like, okay, this is the day I'm gonna start eating. We make these figurative beginnings. However, Christ is the one to create the beginning and other beginnings after that as well. And when we accept Christ, we become new creatures, and so there we're just experiencing a spiritual birth through Christ. These concepts are always circumventing and really just circling around the person that is Christ Jesus in order for us to have these experiences as Christians. The Alpha and the Omega, right? We see that in Revelation, right? And we also see some Old Testament references pertaining to that, right? He is the beginning, he is the Alpha. When Christ first came, he started his church, especially when he was crucified. And then when Christ is going to come again, his second coming. It's very interesting that the Alpha and the Omega makes reappearances throughout the Revelation, but I think it's an indirect indication what Christ is doing here is showing like, when I come again, it's the end. So notice how he's getting his title and imposing on it to make it reality. When his second coming is going, that's it. That's where the end is going to take place and will finish. So in the book of Isaiah, it says there is no God before or after me. And so whenever, if you have that, let's say, discrepancy of not really understanding the Trinity or Christ's divinity, where does he fit into the Godhead? If somehow your mentality goes and shifts away of him being a completely different being and person, because that would mean that now there's multiple gods and multiple divine beings in a sense. God revealing himself through the person of Christ Jesus isn't exactly a new concept. We do see some Old Testament agency of God operating before Jesus was a thing, and Peel and I are out for that. I definitely will go more in depth when it talks about that particular topic. But overall, this divine title, it's only exclusive to God. Nobody can have this. It's no other being nor type of creation can have this kind of thing where they have existed beforehand and they'll continue existing regardless of what happens between the beginning and end of time. It's hard to just basically ignore it because so much rich goodness being impacted in so much, even just like a couple of verses, dude. It's really beautiful, really.